I am a writer and independent curator based in Madrid. I am a regular contributor for magazines like El Cultural, which is Spain's leading art magazine, and Art Forum in the United States. And I'm also an independent curator. I would like to talk about certain themes today in relation to the exhibitions I've made. Let's see if this could be interesting to you. And I am currently working on, as Dora said, on the first retrospective exhibition of Dutch artist Mark Manders in Spain. It will take place next July in Santiago de Compostela, northern Spain, and let's see how it goes. I hope it works. Yeah, I've entitled my talk Skepticism and Nonsense. I really don't know which is the best order to say these words. I don't know if skepticism derives from nonsense. I don't know if it's the other way around. I don't know which one leads to which. But I feel it's a concept that it's been a constant in my work since I started making exhibitions. And in a way, I've tried to show a kind of position of resistance towards, the fever of global capitalism that is heavily hitting the art world in our days, and which is, how do you say? Is activating a pretty negative scene, as I would say, in contemporary art, right? In the exhibitions I've done so far, they try to portray a position of skepticism towards the norm and towards the conventions that radical capitalism is kind of activating in the art world. I was talking to Alberto and Petra yesterday about our concern of how homogenic languages have become in the art world lately. It seems like everything you see is everything made by one single artist. There is a very good example in Madrid. There is a platform for the promotion of young artists, and it takes place in Madrid every February, and it's the most important one. They give you, it's pretty good because they give you 15,000 euros to produce, and you produce a project, and it's shown alongside the works of 10 other young artists every February in Madrid. So this year, the curator of the exhibition darkened the space, so it was pretty dark, and to intensify the scenographic character of the exhibition, and everything was absolutely the same, and it looked like it was made by one single artist, and I think that's pretty worrying. I think mostly dealers and mostly publications are trying to create what I would call, this is maybe too heavy, but I would call it competitive styles and competitive languages, which are created just to function in the market properly, right? What do I mean by this? That it is very difficult to see the presence of the artist in the works of art, and that is very worrying, and that is very sad. We really want to know, what's behind the artwork, right? And why that artwork has actually been created, right? Looks like nobody's behind. Looks like it's a machine that is making these homogenic languages that are working pretty well in the market, and that's about it. And that's all that matters, and that is pretty sad, and I think that is very worrying. And in a way, I think it could be something pretty problematic for contemporary art. I think competitive language in that way has killed experience, which is something pretty important. And there was at a given moment in literature and in contemporary art, like ideas eclipsed experience. And like reflection was, earlier on, reflection was embedded in experience, but suddenly ideas seem to ignore experience, which happened with conceptual art and in many ways in some other aspects of literature. I always take the example of Peter Handke, the Austrian novelist, who is somebody that I admire a lot, and it always seems when you read Peter Handke that his feet are solidly stuck to the ground, and he's really telling what experience he's having, and he's really talking about himself in a very specific moment, in a very specific place. And I think it's a very good example of how experience has to be really behind the artwork, and not just letting perverse ideas shape the artworks. So, as I was saying before, I will focus in this brief talk on the projects I've done as a curator, and in a way, I have done these projects to try to react to the conventions, to try to react to the norm, and trying to use, in a way, some kind of speculative and above all, a skeptical approach to art, which in some cases has evolved onto or developed onto some kind of nonsense, as we will see later on in the works, for example, of two artists that have been key in my formation and in my work, like Dutch artist Bas Jenader and French artist Robert Filiu. When I started curating pretty late, because I started writing quite a lot, and my first exhibition took place when I was like 29 or 30, which is, well, now people are making shows, like teenagers are making shows. And there was a sentence that I was very interested in and I really liked, which was said by Bruce Nauman, who was saying that only when language collapses, poetry occurs, right? So it's only when language actually breaks down that poetry can really occupy a place. And that sentence, which I think is very beautiful, has accompanied me, has been with me through all these years. There was another moment which was very interesting, and this was an exhibition curated by Jörg Heiser, this German curator, pretty good one, in Nuremberg and Vienna. He made an exhibition that was called Romantic Conceptualism, and this took place in 2007 in Kunsthalle Nuremberg and in Fundación Generali in Vienna. And it was an exhibition that matched two words which are pretty difficult to match, which is romanticism and conceptual art, right? Because they are both like pretty different. As we know, conceptual art is very dry. It tries to destroy subjectivity. And romanticism, as we know, is totally the opposite. So I felt that Jörg Heiser wanted to react against a huge convention about conceptual art, and I thought that it was very interesting. He was saying that even in the first generation of conceptual artists, as we know, people like Joseph Kosuth and Lawrence Weiner and Douglas Hubler in New York, or maybe John Baldessari and William Levitt and Bas Jenader and Gert van Elk in California, there were already people in the first generation that were reacting pretty strongly to the conventions of contemporary art. So he took that idea as a point of departure and created a really amazing exhibition that really, truly reacted against the norm. It was an exhibition that included the works of this man I've just mentioned, Bas Jenader, but also Tacita Dean and Alan Ruppersberg and even Andy Warhol. So in this sense, those two references are very important for me, and well, have been, as I was saying before, fundamental and essential for me. So I've done 5 exhibitions that I would like to talk about that try humbly to react to the norm, and these exhibitions have focused on 5 specific topics, which are market, modern sculpture, national or thematic exhibitions, conceptual art, and as I did last year in Madrid, the tyranny of discourse in an exhibition that was called For No Apparent Reason, which I will talk to you about later on. So this was an exhibition called Transactions, and Transactions usually has a very well, economic meaning, but it seeks to reflect on the possibility of an action that takes place afterwards, like transaction, like an afterwards action. In that sense, as I was telling you, this exhibition wanted to react against the norm of these galleries trying to sell everything before the summer, and not actually, this happens in Spain pretty often, and not taking care about the program and just making the easiest exhibition possible just to sell, right? So I was asked to do an exhibition there, and I said, okay. It had three Spanish artists, David Bestúe and Marc Vives. Maybe these two first ones, Bestúe and Vives, are familiar to you. They were in the Venice Biennial in 2009. Very young artists. They've separated now. They don't work together anymore. And then Diego Santomé and Javier Núñez Gasco. David Bestúe and Marc Vives made a very interesting work. It's two artists. One of them is homosexual, the other one is heterosexual, and they signed a contract by which, if somebody bought the work, they would have a sexual relationship, but the collector would not know anything about it, right? So this basically is a work that seeks to undermine how we can trust an artist. So basically, the collector will buy the work, but he will never know if the two artists actually had this sexual relationship. There was another work, which is this. It's called The Shadow of an Artist. And this is, I don't know how you call it, this in the cemeteries, like the lapida, you say, well, in the tomb. The collector could buy this work, but buying this work would mean that he would have to produce the rest of the work. So if he bought this, but he didn't actually pay for the production of the following work, which is the same work, the work would not exist and the work would not happen. So it's a way of actually reacting against that kind of nonsensical fever of selling works of art. In fact, the exhibition was kind of pretty empty, as you can see, and in these kind of exhibitions, we usually have all the walls like covered by artworks, like in a very nonsensical way, like paintings or sculptures or whatever coming from here and there without no specific link or no conceptual line. Yeah, so everything pretty white and pretty empty. That was the contract there, as I showed you before. Then, a few months later, this gallery in Gijón, which is the north of Spain, in a very beautiful place in the sea, asked me to make an exhibition in a gallery which has a very funny and specific connotation. The exhibition was called La Vida en este lado, which means life on this side. And it's actually life on this side of this glass wall, right? So this is not the exhibition, this is just an image of the sculpture. And there is this very modern sculptures, we would say, pretty 50s, no? Pretty 50s, which could be taken by some, the style of Richard Serra, these very strong components, noble material, gravity, matter. We can use loads of words to define this kind of sculpture. This really slow movement, kind of trying to reach an ideal of eternity, maybe, or of... So, obviously, you cannot make an exhibition in this place and ignore this work, right? Because it's so powerful, it's just there. I mean, you cannot just forget about it. So I decided to make an exhibition about some other kind of sculpture that could react to such normative and such strong connotated work. And that's what I called it, life on this side, like life on this side of the glass, because contemporary sculpture is pretty much talking about our daily experiences. It's more dynamic, it's more precarious as well, and it kind of, I really wanted to address a kind of sculpture that would actually underline that maybe domestic ideals, or maybe very daily or day-to-day experiences. So this is seen from above. So I decided to, like, this was one of the most important works of the exhibition. It's by a Spanish artist called Belén Uriel, and it's actually these bags. Maybe most of you have seen them. These are the bags that people from North Africa use for their travels. I mean, if you go to France or Spain in the summer, you have like huge queues of cars going back down to the countries, to Morocco, to Algeria, and they use these bags. And this is like the typical kind of suitcases that they actually use. But it's funny how we have a reticular thing inside. They are like carrying some kind of allusion to this idealistic modern element, which is the grid, in a way, you know. So basically, Belén Uriel is trying to turn over the convention of the modern sculpture as well. This is a view of the exhibition, in which we can see works which are very precarious as well, with that wooden thing. That's Nuria Fuster, she lives in Berlin, and that is Carlos Irijalba, who lives in Amsterdam now, he's in Rijksacademie. And it's basically how Carlos Irijalba, the photograph, we cannot actually see it from here, but it's a photograph of a glass in the middle of the street, and it's basically how he's talking about how sculpture can actually live in the city and get away from this trapped and very cold and very heavily connotated artistic environment in which we usually, or to which we usually associate modern sculpture. These are works by Nuria Fuster as well. She's obviously tearing down or ripping apart the ideals of the monumental sculpture, the anthropocentric sculpture, and this is a kind of conceptual sign that other artists made. He's saying that time is outside and we are inside, basically, in direct relationship with the sculpture itself. Okay, so this is, I was dealing with the market and I was dealing with modern sculpture in a way, and this is an exhibition I'm kind of quite proud of, because this took place in La Casa Encendida, which is a private space in Madrid, which is very popular. It's probably one of the most visited places in Spain in terms of culture. They do dance, they do film, they do theater, they do literature, they do everything. And they have these really beautiful exhibition spaces. So this happened in 2012. I don't know if you know that, I don't know if you've been to Madrid to the Arco Art Fair, which is the main art fair in Spain. It takes place every year in February. And it has this distinctive feature by which there is a guest country every year. This I don't think it happens in any other fair in the world. So basically, the Netherlands were the guest country in 2012, which was a very good guest country, as you can imagine, because they have very powerful galleries and very powerful institutions. So I had the opportunity to make an exhibition there in which I could tackle one of the topics of Dutch art, which is landscape, right? But you didn't want to make an exhibition of Dutch landscape. So the term Dutch landscape is used here as a reference or as an attempt to give a kind of broad overview of something that is happening in the Netherlands. Like in Spanish we call paisaje a panoramic view of what is actually happening somewhere, right? So But at the same time, you don't want to do a national exhibition just to put artists just from one single nationality. You want to say something else, I guess, no? So in this exhibition, what I try to do is to match the works of artists working in the 60s and 70s in the Netherlands and internationally. Artists like Bas Genader, like Marinus Boesem, like Stanley Brown, like Jan de Wets, or like Ger van Elk, who are like the 5 classics of conceptual art in the Netherlands in the 60s. Many of them based in Amsterdam, but some of them actually moving around, like Ger van Elk and Bas Genader, who also lived in California, in LA. And so I really wanted to see, this is something that I find very interesting because really, truly, the artists working today, especially at the beginning of the last decade, were very, very informed by the work of the artists in the 60s and 70s. Maybe now artists are looking further back into the 20s or 30s, but we can all say that conceptual art was at the very heart of artistic creation in the past years. So in a way, I really wanted to say, as I was saying before, I really wanted to say something more specific about the Dutch art, not just merging together the works of 12 artists. So I said, okay, I had 2 rooms, and I said, okay, let's do some kind of duality between inside and outside. As we know, we have like very interesting examples of both indoor painting and outdoor painting in the Dutch painting of the 17th century. We have obviously Vermeer working domestically and indoors, and we have obviously Jacob Ruysdael, for example, who is one of the main references in terms of Dutch outdoor landscape. So I wanted to make an exhibition that could deal with all those things. For example, here we have Jan de Wets, right, who is a very well-known artist, and he's dealing with, very conceptually, very systematically, he's dealing with how the light works inside his own studio, right? So basically this is how, from a very conceptual point of view, we can address a topic that actually happened like 300 years ago, no? This is Katia Mater. Many of you may know her. She's a great young artist. She's also working with layerings of time. This is actually a photographic work. I know it looks like a drawing, but it's like drawing, photo, drawing, photo, drawing, photo all the time until she gets all these layered photographic compositions, right? She's very good. And then we have, for example, here Gwyneth Bullens, who is an artist who is working in a way to try and grasp the essence and the true reality of the space in which she's working. So this is a video, and she's like, I mean, the camera is following the hand, which is actually following the wall all around the studio, right? So this could have a very strong relationship with the work of de Wets as well, who is also very systematically trying to capture the luminic essence of his studio. Then there was the outside. And here there is, I forgot these beautiful images. Oh, it's a pity. But, yeah. This is Marinus Boesem, who is actually, he's a guy from the 60s, and you know, in the 1960s, there was a kind of, not polemics, but you know, the artist was in jeopardy. I mean, the artist was somebody who was maybe not as important as he was before. The artist was not anybody who was going to save the world for us. He wasn't going to save us at all. And a true way of addressing art from a more objective point of view actually eclipsed the work of the subjective work of the artist, no? So Marinus Boesem is painting his own name with the, how do you call it? With the smoke from the plane. My English is getting so terrible. And smoke from the plane. And obviously the smoke from the plane is not going to stay up there in the sky forever, and it actually blurs until it actually disappears. And this is done in the port of Rotterdam. I think this is a very this was a very paradigmatic work in the exhibition, and it's a very paradigmatic work in the whole of Bosom. And now it's gone. Now suddenly the artist has disappeared, because the artist is actually not the solid and majestic person that was before. And then I really wanted to address a kind of mood that would actually evolve onto this kind of skepticism, and maybe leading up to nonsense in contemporary art, which is basically epitomized by the works of, obviously, Bas who has here, this is a very beautiful work that is addressing, obviously, German Romanticism. This could be like Caspar David Friedrich's Monk by the Sea. And this is one of the landmarks photographs in his career. However, there is this very, very beautiful sentence. This was an A4 paper, and it was stuck with some tape to the wall. And if you read it, you can say that this is Sharon Haukema, who is a young artist. Bas he was born in, I'll tell you the Bas story afterwards. Many of you may know it already, but he has a very incredible story. She was born in '78, so she's pretty young, and she is talking about being somewhere lost in the middle of some unbroken, unhindered white. I think this is a really, really beautiful work, which is epitomizing the tone of the exhibition, in which some kind of Beckettian, I think the atmosphere you can see in the novels of Samuel Beckett is pretty much present here, in which you really don't know where you are, in which you really are close to some kind of unconsciousness and some kind of truly lacking knowledge at all, no? And from here, we jump onto these very interesting works in which the absurd comes along. We've seen Beckett in the work before, and we can see very interesting allusions to the theater of absurd, to some kind of, well, to this sheer incredible absurdity, which is actually taking on the conventions that used to be linked to the artist. So now the artist is somebody who is more kind of a clown, and more and something that is actually pretty close to the ridicule, and not as much something whose nobility and whose importance is actually something to admire, as was before. So Ger van Elk is this really funny artist. He's now in his late 70s, maybe. Ger van Elk, he lived in California, and he decided to go on this ship, on this transoceanic ship from New York City to Amsterdam, and he went onto the top of the ship in order to paint, because it was the place in which the least amount of dust could be ever in the world, right? So you can check out how stupid that ambition is. And in the end, such stupidity was actually installed as if it was some kind of jewelry, some kind of a gem. So this is like kind of a monument to absurdity, right? Which kind of grasps or epitomizes much of the tone of the exhibition. Ger van Elk here in this very, very famous work as well. This was made in 1972. He got on this in this really stupid boat, and he tried to flatten the surface of the brook. Actually, the work is called "Flattening the Surface of a Brook," right? So, okay, this is dealing with the outdoor image of Dutch art, but it's actually doing so from a very specific and very concrete situation, which is, as I was saying, the absurd. In this work, this is a video actually, I don't have the video here, so this is a frame. This man called Feiko Beckers, a young artist, he is actually trying to sleep with a banana peel for 13 attempts, but he never does, right? So he's kind of turning over this ridiculous and very absurd situation we would most expect to happen, but which didn't actually happen. Yeah, when we talk about nonsense and when we talk about skepticism, I think one of the artists that best epitomizes those words is Bas Genader. This exhibition was the first time that it was actually that he had an exhibition in Italy. This was Mambo in Bologna, and it actually happened in a very beautiful place called Villa delle Rose, which is a very amazingly beautiful palace built in the 19th century in the outskirts of the city, which is a very well-known exhibition space. So the story of Bas Genader, he was born in 1942 and he died in 1975 when he was 33. He was very keen on sailing. In fact, he had sailed from the Netherlands to California twice. And he reached California, he decided to stay there, and he became a teacher, and he started creating this amazingly unique body of work, which I'm sure you've all seen sometime, and which became really famous in around the end of the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s, and he epitomizes a great deal of what I'm trying to say today. So Bas Genader, this is a very interesting image. This is a little drawing that he made when he graduated, and it's called Implosion. The art and the epigraph is the artist contemplating the forces of nature, right? So he goes up to the rooftop of his house and he's smoking a cigar, and he's actually trying to say or trying to let us know how happy and how conscious he is of his new role as an artist, because he had just graduated in the school. And it's funny because it's like I usually in the text of the catalogue I wrote that there is this image of Dürer, Albert Dürer, the German painter in the Renaissance, that he has a very focused image of himself, you know, the self-portrait in which he's like this and he's trying to look like Jesus Christ. It's like an idea of like, I'm an artist but I'm mostly like God. And in a way, Bas Genader is actually acting like that, no? And so he's smoking a cigar, very proud of himself after his graduation. But the thing kind of turned out differently, and he started. He read all the existentialist writers, and he was very interested in Camus. He was very interested in Beckett. He was very interested in Ionesco, and he was very interested in Wittgenstein as well. And he started getting, I wouldn't say melodramatic, but he started getting, projecting a very truly, I don't know if pessimistic, but a very sardonic image of life. And the wife, or the widow, I met her in Bologna last year with the exhibition. She's an old lady. She's like 80 a lot. And she was saying that she was a very happy man. he was always laughing, they were always drinking, they were always having a great time, but the work itself is actually quite melodramatic. So, what happens here? He's very proud of himself, as we see, but now something's happening in this little photograph, very little photograph. All the clothes in my house, this is called, and these are works that are, clothes that have been left behind. Is left behind the work? Like, have they been actually left there, or we might think that he's actually left and he has left all the clothes there. I guess you've also seen images like this. His most famous works are actually his falls. He has 3 falls. Actually, he has more, but the most important ones are 3 of them. He's falling from the rooftop of the house in Los Angeles. He's falling from an Amsterdam canal, and he's falling from the branch of a tree, right? So these are very short films made in 16 millimeters. They last like 10 or 11 seconds, and he's actually addressing the fall of the hero, right? The hero in this case being the artist, obviously. And these images take us back, obviously, to figures like Buster Keaton and Charles Chaplin, obviously, in the first cinema in the 20s in the States. But they take us back also to Lachute, from Albert Camus and many other writers. These are performative, and these are actually one of the most emblematic images of the art of the 60s. Again, is this conceptual art? I mean, anybody like talking about conceptual art would not include Bastinader amongst the conceptual artists, because it's totally the opposite, right? Especially if we look, this is the fall from the tree. It is very important to say that, obviously, the reference to Yves Klein is very important, but it's very interesting that this is obviously. Let me see if I find this image is probably very famous. He's actually telling us that the work is called "I'm Too Sad to Tell You," and well, is somebody crying? I mean, there's something subjective here. Obviously, he's crying for some reason which he will not let us know. That's a pretty rooted idea in conceptual art, that he is presenting us the idea that he's crying, but he's not explaining the meaning of the idea, and he's not telling us the reason why he's crying, right? So basically, this is the projection of the idea of somebody crying, and that's it, right? Which is, in a way, very conceptual. And in fact, if we see these images, we see Bastinader hanging from the branch, and he suddenly falls to the ground, or to the little brook. We don't know what's happened to him. We don't know the reasons why he got on the branch. We don't know the reasons or the consequences of the fall, right? So this is basically the idea of falling, and that's about it, right? Then the widow has told everybody the little gossiping about every work, but the idea is to let the idea rule, okay? His master was Mondrian, and this is the lighthouse in one of Mondrian's most important paintings of the pre-abstract era, and this is a very clear allusion to Mondrian as well. He's taking like things from the boot of the car, like a blue blanket, the oil thing, yellow, and then I don't know if there were triangles before, but like the red thing we have in the cars, like with a clear allusion to the rigid geometry of Piet Mondrian. So this was basically the exhibition. It was a small show because he died when he was 33, and one of the most interesting things, and this is one of the most interesting things for me, is the fact, as I was speaking before, that Bastinader is actually projecting his own experience, which is something that, as I was telling you before, is pretty much lacking, from my point of view, in contemporary art. He had this works called In Search of the Miraculous, and it's two versions of the work, one has 18 photographs and the other one has 24 photographs, and he's basically walking from the center of Los Angeles to the beach, and he's going from the center, from the inside to outside in a very romantic practice, like trying to reach the open, like reach the unknown, no? And that was called In Search of the Miraculous, which is also obviously a very romantic name. And then there was a second part of In Search of the Miraculous. It was going to be a trilogy, and there was this second part in which he was sailing in a very small boat, like 12 feet, which is 4 meters, from the coasts of Massachusetts to the coasts of the Netherlands. And then there would be the third part of the trilogy in Groningen, which is his place of birth, in which he would do the same as he did in Los Angeles, like walking from the center of the city to the sea. But he was lost at sea, and he was never found when he was 33 years old, on his way to the Netherlands in that second part of the trilogy. So there has been all this legendary thing around this man, and he became like everybody wants to make a film or write a novel about it, and I think he's a very interesting artist. We always think of conceptual art as something like very dry, something like very hermetic, but suddenly we've seen Bashinader crying, and now we see Bashinader saying, "Please don't leave me," which is like something kind of very desperate. Is this the usual address to language in conceptual art? I think it's much more subjective, much more his own, right? And this is a very beautiful postcard of the artist. This was an image of himself. This is not obviously when he was lost at sea. This was in a previous trip, and this is the invitation to the exhibition he made just days before getting lost in his gallery in Los Angeles, in Clegg Copley's gallery. Okay, so I'm finishing. I've spoken about market. I've spoken about this idea of modern sculpture. I've spoken about national or thematic exhibitions. I've spoken about conceptual art. I think I've tried to kind of react to the conventions related to those ideas. And then there's this last exhibition I made last year in Madrid, in Centro de Arte 2 de Mayo, which is one of Madrid's public spaces. It's a museum. And this was called For No Apparent Reason, right? For no apparent reason, the title is like that because I thought that it was pretty similar to the expression out of the blue. Like things happen out of the blue is like things happen for no apparent reason. No, I met you last night on the street out of the blue, like something totally unexpected. And this is obviously Lawrence Weiner, the American artist, who, as you may know, as you surely know, he's a conceptual artist, but he's dealing with the language of sculpture, right? He basically wants us to interpret his sentence. I mean, he will never want to change the meaning of the words he uses, of the sentence he uses, but he wants us to interpret them as we wish, right? So every work is very different in terms of who actually addresses or who actually receives the work, right? You might have seen in Vienna, this is a very famous public work in Vienna, in this shelter, smashed to pieces in the still of the night. It has a truly beautiful poetic thing, and basically this whole shelter, which is like really big and really like, it can actually be smashed to pieces the way we want, right? He he's just planning the idea. It's like smashed to pieces, like it's been smashed to pieces already because it's already in the viewer's mind, and it's actually already happened in the viewer's mind. Okay? I know this is kind of complex and maybe boring, but I really wanted to. This is a nice one too. I really wanted to make an exhibition that could react to the convention of the discourse. Like, everybody is always trying to impose a discourse, and suddenly I felt that I was kind of tired of it, and all the curators, we curators have this huge ego, and we have to tell the most interesting exhibition, and we have to always be the most interesting guys, no? So let's see if we can actually make an exhibition in which the discourse is not important at all, okay? So that's why I use Lawrence Wiener, because out of the blue, the works merge in somebody's consciousness, yeah, and they work inside somebody's brain. So we really don't need anything else in a way, no? Together with Lawrence Wiener, there was this French man called Robert Filliou, who is, for me, lo más, as we say in Spanish. He's like one of the most interesting, one of the most important artists of the 20th century. He was an artist that said that we didn't need to be clever, we didn't need to be intellectual to make art. We just needed to be imaginative and to be creative, and that's about it. And to have 1 gram of imagination, we can already be an artist, and we can obviously understand art, right? He was a man who was very skeptical about technology. He began working in the context of Fluxus, and then he flirted in a little while with conceptual art, but he suddenly moved his own way, and he started creating this hugely personal body of work in which technology, which was a very important issue in the 50s and 60s, as you can imagine, technology was actually being totally attacked all the time. These are fishing poles with which Robert Filliou wanted to fish the moon, right? In a very poetical stance and in a very beautiful critique to technology and to progress, right? It's very interesting because he was an economist, which is quite contradictory, and he studied in Los Angeles, like Bajanader earlier, and then he moved to China, to Southeast Asia, and he started like working in like big economical projects for the promotion of poor countries there and everything, and he said, this is it. I mean, I've had enough with money. I don't want money anymore. And he created this poetical treaty of economy, which is this beautiful cards, in which he was trying to portray a poetical use of economy. This was absolutely marvelous. So it's an exhibition that it was 2 floors, and in the second floor, so it started from above and ended up below. In the second floor, in the start, there was Lawrence Wiener here, up there, and then Robert Filliou in those small cardboards, which are very fragile, which are very the cardboard is, I mean, he didn't want to use any noble materials or anything. It's also, I mean, it's all made out of precarity. And we have here, so apart from these 2 artists, we have artists that want to step down from the urgence and from the idea of creating a discourse, right? So basically this is a very metaphorical, because life is a truly clear metaphor for Robert Filliou, and these are the cardboards. This is a work which means research on doing nothing, which is a very beautiful work, and doing nothing can be much more productive than working all day, basically, he's saying, right? And this is so beautiful. And like, is the anti-productive artist, right? It's like, let's do nothing and that will be the most useful thing ever, no? So this is Francesc Torres, who is a Spanish artist, conceptual artist, who got really, really, really drunk to lose all his cultural knowledge, basically, and start again from zero, which is the place to which Robert Filliou wants to take us, right? And this is Joachim Koster, who is this amazing Danish artist, who is referencing Henri Michaud, the French poet, who was always smoking cannabis, right, in order to mescaline, so that he would be portrayed out of himself and he would create a language that is totally out of consciousness, right? So basically all these artists are trying to move out of themselves, move out of conscious to really start again, but not start again from a very intellectual point of view, but more sensitive, more poetic ways of linking works of art, right? Who is this? This is Ignacio Aballí. He's one of my favorite Spanish artists who has actually, like, following Robert Filliou. I was saying before that Robert Filliou wanted us to do nothing. So Ignacio Aballí left the camera in the museum so that he wouldn't use it while the exhibition was on, okay? So he basically did not want to use it. And so it was an exhibition basically that tried to let the viewers. It also happened in a very specific context because the museum is only 5 years old, and the museum is located in the outskirts of Spain, of Madrid, and there has been no tradition of contemporary art whatsoever. Nothing. There's never been a cultural house. There's never been a museum. There's never been nothing. And suddenly all these people. And suddenly there's this museum on contemporary art suddenly like placed there, like some ovni, and people telling really weird things, really conceptually oriented things. So I decided, okay, let's do an exhibition for the people, and let's do an exhibition for people who don't need to be really, to have a very deep knowledge on contemporary art, and let the works themselves linked to each other through, as I was saying, poetical, sensitive, or any other aspects. Et voilà. This is all I was about to say today. If you have any questions.
So, because you were saying that there was some connection with Mondrian, and I was thinking about this big plant because he's
Yeah. There is a connection. Well, he loved Yves Klein. There is a strong connection to Mondrian as a Dutch master, but there is a strong connection to Yves Klein as well. And he was always wearing blue because of Yves Klein. Even he painted his car blue, the Klein blue, in homage to Klein. Yeah, these are really.
Is also the absurdity in your point of view also connected to utopia, or does it have any kind of connection to utopia?
Robert Filliou has some utopia components in the work. I don't think Bas Janader was too much connected to utopia. You mean in my projects, or you mean in the work? Mine?
Yes, really for me, absurdity and nonsense is a kind of leading to utopia somehow, or
It's truly skeptical. I am.
Utopia is not utopia is kind of believing utopia.
I don't think it's about a utopian component. I mean, my pessimism towards contemporary art is just huge, and it is actually overwhelming. And I think there is a
Yes, I mean, like fishing this kind of poetical things lead to a little bit kind of.
I mean, for me, they're obviously necessary. I mean, when you look at them, I mean, you just cannot go you just cannot ignore it, right? I don't know to what extent somebody working in those issues today would be the same. As powerful as that.
Because by me, often you mention utopia in connection with the artists who operated in the 60s and 70s. But maybe because was more to the concept because of the kind of seclusion or this political situation that there was no escape and there was kind of...
I think the artists working in the 60s in the Netherlands, they were not talking so much about utopia, but as a reaction to the actual convention of art. It was not so much political, but more onto, hey, please don't take subjectivity from me. I mean, let me still talk about me and my own experience. Don't give me these numbers. It's like Stanley Brown walking around and actually counting the steps he was making from one point to the other. No, please, I mean, let me actually portray my experience, no?
Yes, but there is also like these countries are very connected to individualism or like subjectivity or this kind of philosophy of one man, no? Like Hegelian concept of this existentialism.
Well, Adler obviously has this existentialist connection, and especially Adler and sometimes Gert van Eyck as well, but they don't go too deep. I wouldn't say they go too deep. Because if they went too deep, they would have stopped being conceptual artists, I think. I mean, because they would be deepening into an idea, and you don't want to deepen into an idea of conceptual art, or the first generation conceptual art, no? I don't know. Can you?
Thank you. I just want to ask about one piece of art I misunderstood. It was a white cube on a red cushion behind the glass.
Yeah.
And I just missed it. What was about it? What the artist was doing? Yeah.
He went on the top of the boat in a very windy and stormy day, and he just wanted to paint this piece of wood in a white color, and he actually selected that place to do it because it was the place in which the least amount of dust could be. Well, the idea is that I mean, let's do the biggest effort in order to achieve the least, basically. No, it's like.
Okay. Thank you. I got it now.
It's like, how can I take the biggest risk of my life to achieve nothing? No? Which is also what Bas-Genader as well did. Bas-Genader wasn't actually crazy. I mean, he had sailed from the Netherlands to the States before in a very small boat. And the legend usually says that maybe he's still alive somewhere, but he knew what he was doing. And yeah. Okay. Thanks so much.